is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
The agony of defeat.
Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Hello and welcome to the Past Star Prime podcast. I am joined as always with my two good friends, and I think I've gotten the names right, 3-4 episodes in a row. Bill McGuggacucky and Mark Hangelberger.
God, you're good.
Yes. From Ireland.
Billy Mahoney, Mark Hoffman, Scott Johnston. We are the trio known as Past Star Prime. June 17th, 1974, Sports Illustrated. And now we are talking my kind of stuff. The super duper star, Reggie Jackson, the swinging A's. This was a team built for the time of life we are in now. They were built for Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok. They used to fight. They didn't like each other, but they would win, man, and they would pitch and hit home runs. Mm-hmm. Reggie Jackson on the cover of the June 17th issue 50 years ago, and we will get to that shortly. We will also have a couple guests on the show to talk about one of the craziest nights in baseball history, 10-cent beer night in Cleveland from June 4th, 1974. If you didn't think it ended well, you're right. So, anyway, let's get right to it today. And the scorecard. Billy?
Yeah. There's the... I didn't know there was a United States Olympic hairstyling team. Anyone here? I didn't know that.
I did not know that
It was
either.
led by Dirty Sally Hance. Make her day, man. If you can out-comb, out-curl, and out-style anybody the U.S. could do, that's what she said they could do. She said they're really going to go to show that there's some good heads out there. Don't mean that perversely, please. Each style competes in 4 categories: day, evening, and mode of the day, and gala. The work is judged for appearance. Gold, silver, and bronze medals are presented on a victory stand. National anthems are played and flags are waved. I had no idea this was even there. I don't know if it still is.
I sure hope not.
Yeah, I when I read that, I thought,
I'm surprised that wasn't a big TV thing.
And they were going to have the national championships were going to be in Vienna.
You get in those curls right there. Yeah. Get in there.
That's a perm! That's a perm!
What are you doing? You butchered this. Yeah.
I would just send a bunch of bald guys.
That's right. You make it work or you get the hell out.
I have one, though, that is on the Toronto Maple Leafs actually raising ticket prices, and, again, granted, this is 1974, but they were actually talking about, they were color coding like their seats, and they were actually going to raise it from $7.70 a ticket to $12 a ticket. That means for 2 tickets for a 40-game season, plus the exhibition games, $1,000. Now, I think if you go to a Laker game, you'd probably pay $1,000 for one seat. But yeah, $12 a ticket,
Well, I just paid $200 for 2 Dodger tickets, so that,
Really?
Yeah.
Coming up?
August.
Yeah.
I mean, that, so that shows you where prices have gone.
Right.
It used to be, like I said, when I went to a Kings playoff game against Edmonton in '87, we sat 3 rows behind the goal, $18.95 a ticket.
Yeah.
So
I know in '81, I was 13, and A's games during the week, kids under 14 could get in half price.
Yeah.
And so they had $6 third deck seats that I could get for $3.
Oh.
And, the ushers back then, they didn't check your seats. And the A's used to draw like 6, 7, 8,000 people. So we'd sit wherever we wanted for $3.
It was great. Yeah, the Angels used to have.
And you know what? The thing is, that's how they got a lifelong fan, right?
That's right.
Because you could
That's right.
afford to go to the games.
That's right.
How do little kids go to games now?
Yeah, because when I was young, the Angels had the school giveaway.
Right.
To where if you got C's or whatever, you got a free ticket in the upper deck. That's how I became to love the team because, like you said, I was there.
Yeah.
And I was watching, and I didn't have to spend a lot of money.
Right.
Nowadays,
You
they
can't do that.
jack them
No
up everywhere
chance.
because people
Right
can't
now,
get
you're
in.
like you said, you go to a game,
One game.
a year,
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yep.
I also like how they said it. They have 18-year-old Robin Yount talking
Yeah.
about Vita Blue and asking about facing for the first time. He's good. I used to watch him on TV when I was a kid. Yeah, like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yesterday?
Yeah. But that's just crazy that Robin Yount was playing Major League Baseball and pretty well as an 18-year-old.
Ended up in the Hall of Fame, over 3,000 hits. I'll never forget him. He moved to center field later in his career, and he made that diving catch to save a no-hitter. Mm-hmm. I forget who the pitcher was. So he comes up at a shortstop, an all-star shortstop. I don't think he was great right away, but
He was
you wouldn't
solid.
He was good, and then just a great player.
Didn't he double Gold Glove it? Wasn't?
Yeah, I think he got.
Yeah, it
one
was like
for
an
both.
Erstad guy where he went
Yeah.
to first to outfield. He was just a great player. He just became better every year, and
And when you think Milwaukee
18,
Brewers,
Yeah.
he might be the guy.
Isn't
He
it
had
him
the
and
blonde
Molitor?
curly hair
Yep.
that would like
Him
just
and
come from
Molitor.
under the helmet. I remember that.
Yep.
Take me out to the brawl game. Wow.
Yeah.
One of the most infamous nights in baseball history is June 4th, 1974. Indians owner, I think his name was Ted Bonda, thought, how about doing a 10-cent beer night as a promotion? So what could go wrong, right? They knew there might be some issues as they beefed up security from 32 to 48. 48 security guards to handle over 25,000 fans, most of them inebriated. A few stupid antics happen as the game begins. Firecrackers thrown onto the field, a woman trying to hug the home plate umpire, Mark running on the field naked.
For the second time.
Yeah, running on the outfield
Right?
fence.
Sliding into second.
And when he
That
jumped
left
over
a
the fence,
mark.
they got him in a plastic bag or
Right?
something.
Yes. Streakers, drunk streakers, they're the worst. Mm-hmm. But then it got bad. The Indians tied the game in the ninth, and the home crowd lost their drunken minds. Rangers outfielder Jeff Burroughs was surrounded. His manager Billy Martin led the cavalry onto the field. Him and a few players waving bats as they headed onto the field. The field was just covered with drunken fans. 9 arrests are made. 3 Rangers injured. I've been in this game 25 years, says Billy Martin, and I've never had an experience like this. That was the closest I ever saw to someone getting killed in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
People were acting like idiots. Was it the beer? I don't know. I'm thinking it was the beer.
Maybe.
Yes.
And they stole all the bases.
But here's what's really, you have to set the stage. So a week earlier, the Indians are playing in Texas.
Yep.
And Lenny Randall of the Rangers lays down a bunt, and Milt Wilcox is on the mound. And Milt goes to grab it, and Lenny just plows right over him.
Where
And
he
that's-
head right toward him too.
Yeah,
he
right.
didn't. He
Yeah.
didn't run the line. He went right at him.
And that set off just a brawl and the bad feelings. And people were worried they were going to play the following week in Cleveland. And they asked Billy Martin, "Are you worried about it?" And he says, "Nah, because they don't get many fans in Cleveland." Boy, was he wrong.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. They used to get around, 3,000-5,000.
Yeah, exactly. It was a
And that one
wide
you
open
offer 10
field.
cent beer.
This one, yeah.
I think Major League the movie, was better than the teams.
Oh, yeah.
In many days. Yeah.
more than 60,000 10-ounce cups were down that night. So, yeah, I think it was the beer. But it wasn't the only incident. It was the worst of the incidents. But last month, Astros outfielder Bob Watson cut his face while tracking a ball down the left field line while bleeding. The fans in Cincinnati seemed to be wondering if he was okay. No. Instead, they threw ice and poured beer on him, which is a really nice thing to do when you see a guy bleeding.
Yeah.
Watson and his teammates were invited to scale the wall and come at them. It's obvious to me what the problem is, Billy. The people in Ohio are nuts.
Yes. Oh yeah, we could almost kill the Ohio State game, so I can
Right?
attest to that.
I remember that.
Well,
you go.
what Cleveland was the mistake by the lake,
Right.
It gets all
Yeah,
that
the
bad
Memorial
reputation.
Stadium.
Henry Aaron honored whenever he plays In this, his showcase season has been subjected to abuse from grandstand delinquents. At a recent game in San Francisco, a young spectator leaned into the Braves dugout and hurled an orange, hitting Aaron on the side of the head. Now imagine that. This is like the elder statesman.
Yeah.
I mean,
Classy,
just
great
set
guy.
the record of all
Yeah.
records, and you're like, I think I'm going to hurl an orange at him.
That's fair.
Gosh.
And actually hit him.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like it bounced. It hit him in the head.
Right.
And they said the same thing about Pete Rose. When he went to L.A., he was showered on with ice cubes, food, flashlight batteries, and other debris. A battery would hurt.
No
You know?
question. In
Yeah.
Boston, a fan rolled a cherry bomb into the
Oh, my
Minnesota
God.
dugout, fragments causing slight injury to several players, including pitcher Ray Corbin, who was hit close to the eye. In Arlington, Texas, Cleveland catcher Dave Duncan was struck by a full
Yeah.
can of beer. So this is just happening on and on and on. The theory written about what the ball was that the ballparks grew larger and the players seen from a greater distance grew smaller, less familiar, less vulnerable. From afar, they looked like heroes. And for at least 30 years or more, there was a general trend towards spectator conformity. The ball diamond was a sanctuary not to be broken into by Philistines. Then, too, there was no television to tantalize the show-offs. If you hear what is hollered at us here and elsewhere, said the Reds' Johnny Bench in Cincinnati, you would think they don't believe anybody is anything. It's dehumanizing. Said Dr. Arnold Beiser, a Los Angeles psychiatrist who was a student of fan behavior. The old fan yelled, "Kill the umpire." The new fan tries to do it.
Yeah,
So-
and we can attest to it. We've been close to the players in spring training. The things that people say to ball players.
Yeah.
I heard kids and dads just F-bombing players, the White Sox guys, and I'd never really heard it. I remember standing back thinking, boy, but man, back in this day, because remember, everyone always thinks, this day is bad. They were doing it back then, too. I mean, there were some bad people.
No question. No question. One of the players who was unfortunate enough to participate in this game 50 years ago is 16-year veteran pitcher Milt Wilcox, a member of the Indians team in 1974. I remember him more from his days in Detroit.
Me
In
too.
particular, Mark, you'll like this. 1984, a major piece of that team, winning a career-high 17 games, and in the postseason, 8 shutout innings to beat Kansas City in the deciding third game of that series, and he won Game 3 of the World Series over the Padres, helping the Tigers to a championship 40 years ago. Milt, thank you for joining us today to talk about that crazy night in Cleveland back in 1974.
Hey, well, thank you guys very much. Yeah, we had a lot of crazy nights in Cleveland. That was an amazing 3 years I spent there because they had to do so many crazy nights to draw people there.
And that one probably stands at the top of the list for many, that's for sure. Milt, when did you first realize that something about this night seemed a bit off?
Actually, the first inning. I mean, you could just tell from the crowd. It wasn't a regular crowd. Actually, a regular crowd, there's about 3,000 people. I mean, that's what we were drawing, except for opening day. And that night, I think we had probably 15,000, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were. But there was a big crowd there, and it was because people could buy 10-cent beers, and there was no limit.
Did you know it was 10-cent beer night when you got to the ballpark? Did you know that ahead of time?
Oh, yeah, we knew it was coming. Well, this night was kind of marked on our schedule because, first of all, the Texas Rangers were coming in. And a couple of weeks before, we just got into it with them in Texas. So it was kind of marked on our schedule. And then, oh, my gosh, 10-cent beer night on top of that. We kind of felt like something might happen.
So this was actually brewing. Talk about the fact that earlier you were playing the Rangers in Texas and Lenny Randle was at the plate. And he laid down a bunt and you were pitching. And then what happened?
Well, it started the night before when Gaylord Perry was pitching against Gaylord was pitching against them, and he beat them. I can't remember what the score was, 5-1 or 5-2 something. And then Lenny Randle, he's kind of a hothead. He got a couple of hits off Gaylord, and so the next morning in the paper it said Lenny Randle quoted, he's over the hill. He's washed up. He's lucky that we didn't kill him. Well, I mean, Gaylord Perry's a Hall of Famer, and Lenny Randall was just a kind of a journeyman guy, you know, that was a good ball player. I'm not going to say he wasn't a good ball player. He was a good ball player, but you know, he shouldn't have got on Gaylord. And Gaylord was a friend of mine, and Gaylord knew that I was going to be pitching the game in New York. I mean, in Cleveland. And he walked up to me and he said, "You remember Lenny Randall, what he said to me?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Would you drill him for me?" And I go, you know, if Gaylord Perry asked you to do something, you most likely would do it.
Right.
And I wasn't going to hurt him. I was just trying to hit him in the leg or something, just to, you know, send a message to him. And I ended up throwing the ball behind him. I missed him and threw it behind him. And that's what kind of ignited it didn't ignite it then. I think the next pitch or the pitch after, I threw a ball and he bunted it down the first baseline. I went over to field it to pick up, to throw him out at first, and Lenny V'd off the base pass, hit me in between the pitcher's mound and first base and knocked me down. And he went on to first base, and that's when the big melee started.
So it was a big fight, and then the bench is clear, and then sort of it dies down a little bit, but the hard feelings aren't lost.
No, the hard feelings were still there, and that's what we thought that would be probably what would be, start the thing in Cleveland, right? So that was kind of the backdrop to the whole story, and then all of a sudden they come to Cleveland. Billy Martin was their manager. Lenny Randall was there. I mean, it was ready to go, and then of course the first inning, people started. Streaking the field. I'm talking with no clothes on. They were streaking the field from left field to right field. And you go, "Oh my God, this is not going to happen, is it?"
Yeah, we're well aware of the streaking that was going on in
those years.
in the 70s. My goodness. So and drunk streakers, that's a joy. So let me ask you, was this the first of the series?
I believe it was, yeah.
Okay. So you said first game of the series, first inning, and right away you know that it's going to be a night to remember. Some weird stuff might take place. But let's fast forward a bit, and you're pitching the ninth inning now. You came in, I believe, in the seventh. You're pitching the ninth.
Right.
And when you finish that inning, you go to the dugout, and soon enough, really all hell breaks out. When you think back to that night, what few things do you remember and stand out?
Well, I remember that in between each inning, there was more and more streakers. I mean, you're talking to the first inning. The second inning, there was 10. The third inning, there was 50. The fourth, fifth, sixth innings, there was hundreds. Then in between, like we got them out in the top of the ninth, and then all of a sudden, from the left field line, there must have been 500. It seemed like there was 500 people came across the field, and they were running from left field to right field. And the right fielder, I believe, is Jeff Burroughs or one of the other guys. I can't remember who it was. So all of those people surrounded him.
Burroughs.
Yeah, it was Burroughs.
Yeah.
Jeff Burroughs. So they surrounded him, and all of a sudden you look at the Texas dugout. They've all got, here they come, they're charging out to go out to right field. And they got batting helmets on. They got bats in their hands. It was like a charge of the Light Brigade. And they were sprinting across the mound, heading to right field. Well, Perry jumps up and says, "Come on, guys. We got to help these guys." So our guys all started running out of the dugout. I take about 2 steps out. People are throwing chairs from the upper deck. I mean, chairs and beer and everything they could pick up were started throwing. And that's when the whole thing just went crazy.
Oh my God! So I mean, you were.
Oh, it was wild. I mean, the cops weren't. Nobody was really expecting it, so there really wasn't any cops out there.
Yeah.
People were all over the field. There was fights breaking out. I don't really remember what happened to the Texas Rangers, but I'm sure they went out there and got Burroughs out of there where he wouldn't have got hurt.
Was there any interaction between you and the fans, and if so, what happened?
Well, funny thing, I've been there for 3 years, and we had made a lot of friends with some of the fans. And one of the fans, I've never told this story. So one of the fans, his name was Carmen Piuno, and he was an Italian guy, and he had a restaurant, pizza restaurant called Nasala's. And we used to all go over to his pizza restaurant after the game, and we'd sit in there, drink beer, and he'd make us pizzas, and it was really a nice. And I think the guy was connected. I think he was connected to Vegas somehow. And so I used to leave tickets all the time. I never really knew what he did. We just went there to a place to have pizzas and stuff. And so I jump out on the field. I get surrounded by 6 people, 6 of his guys that I'd left tickets for. They surrounded me and they said, nobody gets through us to get to you. Oh. I go, thanks, Carmen. So I had a protective bubble around me. And I'm walking out there. I only walked out like 8 or 10 feet because, it was scary.
Sure.
It was really scary out there because you didn't know where anything was. One of our guys, Tom Hilgendorf, he was a left-handed relief pitcher.
Right.
Somebody threw a folding chair from the upper deck and hit him in the head with it.
Oh, my God.
And there was a couple other guys that was ducking chairs and bottles and all sorts of things. It was scary.
And so Nestor Chilak then forfeits the game. At what point did you realize they're forfeiting the game and giving the win to the Rangers?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to win that game. That was a bad thing.
That's right.
Been one more win.
That's
on
right.
Me. So yeah, that just had. I mean, it had to happen because there was no way they were clearing that field. That field was. I mean, they were. I think they had to call in the mounted police on horseback to get on the field and get all the people off.
And from what I
mean, it was crazy, is what it was.
So what's super crazy that I read was you would think after this happened that'd be it for 10-cent beer night, but apparently they had another one a month later.
Oh yeah, they had so many of those crazy promotions out there. They never learned that stuff. There was nobody coming to the game. I mean, I remember that one year we started out. Gaylord Perry pitched the opening day. I think it was 72, whatever year it was. He was an opening day pitcher. For his game, they had 55,000, right, for opening day. He wins the game. The next night, we had 3,000.
Well, you're averaging 29,000.
Then yeah.
Well, yeah, especially when Gaylord pitched. That's the only time we ever drew any crowds.
Well, what's funny is Billy Martin's quoted after the first incident with you and Randall, are you worried about going to Cleveland next week? And he says, oh, they never have any fans go to their games anyway. And boy, was he wrong.
Right, exactly. I remember him saying that.
Yeah.
Lenny Randall and I, we got along together. It's just, Gaylord asked me to hit him, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want to hit him and hurt him.
Right.
So I was aiming for his rear end area and just threw the ball behind him a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way baseball was played back in those days.
Right.
We knocked people down. We got, if a guy swung too hard off of you, I mean, I didn't have to. Gaylord and some of those guys, Gaylord was the kind of guy in spring training. When you were warming up to get ready for the season, you go out and have the pitchers go out and throw batting practice to the hitters. Mm-hmm. Gaylord never threw batting practice to our hitters. He says, I'm never going to throw where some guy's going to sit up there and get my timing and hit me. So his batting practice in spring training was like a pitching session.
Wow.
So that's the kind of guy I grew up on.
Did you ever talk to Lenny Randall about the situation, him running into you in the brawl and stuff like that? What happened with that?
Yeah, actually, years later, Lenny Randall and I played. We played in a senior league. Remember they had a senior baseball league down in Florida, and Lenny Randall and I played on the same team together down there. So yeah, we talked about it. It's, you know what it is, spur of the moment thing, and you get hot headed, but that's the way it is. I think in '81, I got into a big thing with George Brett, right? George Brett, and nobody could get him out in '80 or '81. Yeah, hits a home run off me, and I knock him down the next time up, and we get in another big brawl in Detroit. And after the game, him and I are meeting down at the bar down there to have a drink together. I mean, if you ever talk to George Brett, ask him about that.
Okay.
I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I mean, we'd always been friends, and most of the ball players are, we're acquaintances.
Right.
but something happens and it's just a spur of the moment thing.
Now this I think find really weird. Okay, so not only are you involved in this 10-cent beer night, but correct me if I'm wrong, you were also on the Tigers on disco night at Comiskey Park when they blew up all the records.
I was, and I was supposed to pitch the second game of that doubleheader.
Another forfeited game.
No, but we got the forfeit, but I didn't get the win.
Oh
man.
They are just screwing you left and right, Mel.
That's
when
two more.
See, that's another 2 wins.
Yes.
I might have made the Hall of Fame with those 2 wins.
Yes.
So when they told you, hey, we're going to be blowing up disco records in between games, did you think that's not a good idea?
Well, no, it was no big deal, right? I mean, the crowd was different. It was a crowd. It was like a rock and roll. I think it was a rock and roll crowd, right?
Right.
So I'm going down. First game, there was nothing going on. I mean, it was just a regular game with a bunch of people there, and there was a lot of people there, and so we're thinking, oh, this is pretty good because usually you go to Comiskey Park and there's nobody in the stands, and so I think we won the first game. We're getting ready to play the second game. I'm not sure if we won the first game.
I think you did.
I'm walking down. I'm walking down to the dugout. My catcher, my warm-up catcher was John Walkenfuss, and we're walking down there together. And all of a sudden I look out in the right center field, and there was this gigantic wagon, a wooden wagon, sit out in right center field, and it was stacked full of stuff. You couldn't tell what it was, but it was records. And so all of a sudden you hear the disc jockey go 3, 2, 1. And there was a humongous explosion. I mean, it was like a 500-pound bomb just went off in the field.
Another good idea.
I know.
No, the trailer goes up in the air. It blows a 5-foot hole in right center field.
Oh my God.
I mean, there was a deep where it went. So when that happened, the crowd just came on the field. It was ridiculous. It couldn't have been like a couple of minutes later. John and I, we started heading back to the dugout. And we got back, and then the umpires went out on the field. The cops were all there. They were trying to get all the people back, and nobody would. Plus, there was a big hole out in right center field. You couldn't play the game anyway.
Hey, at least nobody was throwing chairs during that.
No, they were throwing bombs. You know what's really weird about that?
Huh?
They were throwing these records from the upper deck.
Oh.
These 33, 33 and a third RPM
Right,
records,
right.
the big ones that are about that big around.
Yeah.
They were firing them from the upper deck, and they were coming down and sticking in the ground
Yeah.
like a knife.
Right. I would say that would cut
That'd kill you.
Oh my God.
Oh, it would kill you. You could definitely get killed with them. They were throwing them like frisbees.
My goodness, Milt, I had no idea that this was such a dangerous sport.
But we have to.
Oh, it's a real dangerous sport.
Now let's go back. So you've involved in a brawl in Cleveland. You've got the disco night, but then I heard also in Cleveland you dealt with Evel Knievel on the field. How'd that go?
Yeah. So he's trying to start his motorcycle. He's going to jump a bunch of buses. They're going to have this bus jump on the field. And so I had a motorcycle. You wasn't supposed to have a motorcycle when you're playing baseball, right? But I like motorcycles. So I had a motorcycle. It was a Honda 500, and I rode it to the ballpark. Anyway, so he's out on the field, and I'd always kind of watched Evel Knievel and kind of liked doing what he's doing. So he's out there, and he's got his promo guy's manager there. And they're trying to get the motorcycle started. Well, he had so many broken bones that he couldn't kickstart the motorcycle. It didn't have the electric start on him back in those days.
Right.
So you had to kick your leg and start it. Well, he couldn't do it. And I said, "You guys need anything?" He goes, "Yeah, can you help us get this thing started?" I said, "Sure." I go over there and I give it a couple of kicks and start his motorcycle up. He says, "Thanks, bud. I appreciate that." And off he went, riding his motorcycle, dumping buses.
And the other thing that crazy.
That was right after the great. That was right after the great Walindas were walking tight ropes across the stadium.
That's right. They
right.
did.
That's right. That's right.
Video. Oh my God.
I forgot about the great Walindas.
They got to bring that back.
So I got two really quick questions to ask you. Okay, one,
All right.
you started your career with the Reds and Sparky Anderson, and then your
Right.
pinnacle of your career is with Sparky. I wanted a quick comment on working with Sparky. And the other thing, you went through a lot of arm problems early in your career. Is it true that bowling helped you become healthy and be able to pitch?
It did. Yeah. So anyway, so when I started with Cincinnati, I pitched really well. I threw really good in my early years, right? I mean, they didn't have radar guns back there, but I was probably throwing 95, and my ball was moving all over the place. So it was kind of hard to hit. And so then when I went to Cleveland, I started off really good there. And then I pitched the game, and after the game, I couldn't lift my shoulder. I probably tore a rotator cuff, but that was before rotator cuff surgeries were known, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I scrambled for a few years. And so I went back to Oklahoma, and there was a doctor there. His name was Dr. O'Donohue. And in Oklahoma City, where I grew up, and I was having all sorts of problems with my elbow and my shoulder. And he says, I went back there and I said, "What do you think, Doc?" I said, "I don't think I can pitch anymore." And he goes, "I want you to start bowling." And I said, "So what's bowling going to do to my shoulder?" And he says, "Well, when you pitch, everything goes this way. It goes forward. So all the back part of your muscles are getting used, but the front part aren't getting used. In bowling, you take the ball back, right? And you're giving exercise to those muscles." I started bowling, and my shoulder started feeling better. My elbow quit hurting. And Dr. O'Donohue, right now, he's passed, but O'Donohue and all the other doctors who do all the shoulder surgeries and the Tommy John, they all go by the theories that Dr. O'Donohue did way back at the Bone and Joint Clinic in Oklahoma City.
That's funny because we just had Tommy John on the show talking about, the Tommy John surgery. He could have just bowled and avoided all that.
Done.
Well, back in the days, they didn't know anything about the shoulder or the elbow. And
no, they knew that. They knew that when you were hurt, you were done. That's what they knew.
That's true, yeah.
No, you know what they did in '84. In '84, so in '81, '82, '83, I had really good years, but I had to go on the disabled list because my shoulder was starting to bother me. And all those years, so what they do is they give you cortisone shots. And in '84, I had I didn't miss a start. I had 7 cortisone shots in '84, and that's the only reason that I could pitch in between my starts, is because the cortisone was in there. And I never missed. I had 33 starts that year, a playoff start and a World Series start. And before the playoffs start, I beat Kansas City 1-0, right? There's a third game of the playoffs. 2 days before that start, the Tigers flew me from Kansas City. We were out there. We played the first 2 games in Kansas City, and I told them my shoulder hurt me. So they fly me into Chicago with nobody knew it. The doctor was in Chicago at a doctor's conference, and he had a cortisone shot in his room. I had to go up in his room, get the cortisone shot, get on the plane, fly back to Kansas City, so that nobody missed me. I flew back with the Tigers. I pitched that game, and I shut them out 1-0 because I couldn't feel my shoulder.
Wow,
my shoulder was completely numb.
But all those cortisone.
So they give you cortisone and a pain deadener, and that's what I went out there with.
And all the cortisone shots help because you end up winning a World Series.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing. I pitched. We beat the San Diego Padres in the 5th game, right? Mm-hmm. If we would have, I pitched the 3rd game. If we would have if I would have played there, and we had a 6th game, I was going to start that 6th game, but we had the doctor. If we wouldn't have won that night, the doctor was going to be at the ballpark and give me a cortisone shot that night, and I was going to pitch the next day.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you just needed to get your ring sized instead of the cortisone shot because it all ended happily, didn't it? That was a great team.
It was. You know what? It was worth it. I probably lost 3 or 4 years, but the World Series victory was worth it, and I really, I enjoyed the time I played baseball. I was just at a different time, right? I was just before. I was just before the big money. I was just before, I was just before all that stuff. But I wouldn't have given it up for nothing.
So I have a little trivia segment here I'm going to do with you. Before I do that, just one thing I want to say. I feel for you because I grew up a Tigers fan. I had an aunt from Detroit, even though I was born in Chicago and raised in L.A. I had an aunt from Detroit, brainwashed
Too
me.
bad for you. Too bad for you. They're all bad years.
Yeah, no, but I started following the Tigers in '67. So I saw the '68 World Series, the '84 World Series, '84 World Series. I saw them when they lost 19 in a row in '75. I had the good and the bad. So I grew up in.
I got you.
So in '83, we didn't have television of the game, but I was watching it at work through the wires, and you had that perfect game against the White Sox with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and my heart just was crushed, as I'm sure yours was, to see that end with 2 outs in the 9th.
You know, I was having a really good interview with you guys until you brought that up.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's what Mark does every damn time.
No matter the game.
I couldn't sleep that night, as I'm sure you couldn't either.
That was a really good game. What happened was the crowd in Chicago caused me to lose that perfect game.
How so?
Because what happened was in the bottom of the ninth, I got the first 2 batters out, and then they brought in a pinch hitter, Jerry Harrison. And when he was coming to the mound, the people in Chicago were giving me a standing ovation. And when do you ever think that somebody from Detroit would get a standing ovation from a Chicago crowd?
Yeah. They were
never. So I heard it, and I backed off the mound a little bit, and I go, God, I can't believe they're cheering for me. And then that broke my concentration. I had such a high level of concentration that game from the 6th inning on. I'll tell you what happened, really. In the 6th inning, Carlton Fisk was the hitter, right? He was the batter. And he always hit really well. I went 3 balls and no strikes on him, and I backed off the mound, and I said, okay, now you got to bear down on this guy because he hits you. You're going to throw 3 straight fastballs on the outside corner, and you're going to strike him out. I throw 3 straight fastballs on the outside corner, and I strike him out. And from that, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, I was on that other level. You know, you always hear people saying they're on another level.
Yeah.
And I knew what I was going to throw before the pitch. I knew what was going to happen before the pitch. Everything was so clear until the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs.
Wow.
Well,
and then I get the next header out on the first pitch.
Oh, God.
So,
oh, my God.
A 1-hitter.
Wow. So close. But
that was a good game.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we brought you on the show because of your days as an Indian and the crazy 10-cent night. So I'm going to end with this trivia question. It's a 50-50. We call it 50-50. You get a 50% chance to answer a question from 50 years ago, but I'm sort of cheating here. It's not really 50 years ago. The most famous movie involving the Cleveland Indians is obviously Major League, okay?
Right.
All right. True or false? The baseball scenes were not shot at Cleveland's Municipal Stadium, but at Milwaukee's County Stadium.
Oh.
True or false? You got a 50-50 shot.
False?
Yeah.
I'm going to say false.
No, unfortunately, it's true. They shot all the interiors at Milwaukee because Bob Uecker played the announcer in the movie, and it was all.
That's true.
All
you know what? The reason I said that is because both clubhouses were terrible. You couldn't tell the difference between Milwaukee's and Cleveland's is probably worse back in the day.
Including the home one.
The home one was terrible. I mean, it was probably one of the worst clubhouses I've ever been in. And it's the same clubhouse that the football players played in.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
So it really was Major League.
Yeah. Well, Milt, you know.
Oh, it was terrible.
We had you on to talk about that crazy night. I had no idea there were so many others. We could have lost you how many times? I have no idea. So I'm glad you were able to live through it. And to think you could have died, and it would have only cost that drunken 60 cents to have ended your life. So I'm glad you escaped, and I can't thank you and thank Kathy for helping out with the technical issues. This was a really fun talk. So thank you so much.
No problem, guys. I love talking baseball, especially the crazy part.
You're great.
Great.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll be in touch. Thanks, Milt.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Milt Wilcox, 16-year veteran.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. That's right. He's speaking Mark's language there.
Right, he is.
You know, the owner of the Indians, and Mark, you mentioned this, Ted Bonda, he was doing everything imaginable to get fans to come to the games, hence this promotion. And they did have 27,000 people. So as Milt said, that was just unheard of for Indians games back then. The owner gets summoned to the commissioner's office, and they're about to, hey, what the hell's going on? What are you thinking? And he's like, are you kidding? This was a huge success. Yeah. We're doing this again. And they're like, you are not. But he won. They did do it again. They had minor adjustments. They had a limit, although they used to have a limit at ball games when I would go to, and you know what you do? You just get someone else to go buy the beers.
But they never counted your beers. No. When I was a kid, you could go up and go 4. And they go, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know how that was. They did triple the security force, so they had maybe 100. They didn't have any more problems, so apparently it worked. But 10-cent beer night, you would have thought was a one-and-doner, but it wasn't.
And he said, I think we won the first game. I'm going to say they won the first game. I'm going to say it was like a 4-1 or 4-2 game, and Pat Underwood was winning pitcher for the Tigers. Now, if I'm right on this.
Which one is it?
So it'd
what
be
year?
In 79 at Chicago, like June of 79, I'm guessing, somewhere there. Or
just put Disco Demolition night.
And the Tigers won the first game of the doubleheader. It was like 4-1, 4-2, Pat Underwood. And then I got all upset because the second game, they didn't play. It was a doubleheader. It got forfeited because of the disco.
Okay, the winner of that game.
Yes.
Jeff Underwear.
It's not Pat. It's Jeff.
No, Jeff Underwear.
Underwood.
Oh yeah, him. You got it. Yes, you got it.
It was a Pat Underwood.
It was.
And what was the final score?
Final score was 4-1 Detroit.
Oh my God! I am sick.
Okay.
All right.
That was a great interview.
For more on this game, we bring on Vince Guerreri, a writer and journalist in Cleveland who was the author of the book Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. And let me tell you that if you look at that book, you'd be shocked at how many weird moments there are in Cleveland sports. And Vince, not going to lie, going to be hard to top 10-cent beer night.
Yeah, it certainly will. And that is actually the third book I've written. I should say I wrote 2 and co-wrote another. And it is by far the longest that I've ever written. It is definitely a target-rich environment. And 10-cent beer night is one of those things that when you talk about moments in Cleveland sports, everybody wants to talk about 10-cent beer night because it just was so weird.
I'm going to start at the end because it says so much about the ownership and the get money at all cost mentality that Ted Bonda, the Indians owner, would consider the night a success. I know they had 27,000 people, which was a lot for them, and he ended up pleading his case to the commissioner with some minor adjustments. They actually allowed them to have more 10-cent beer nights. The original night, I mean, isn't it just a bad idea from the inception?
No, it really wasn't. I mean, this was a popular promotion throughout Major League and Minor League Baseball for the better part of the preceding decade. And, we only remember this one. I can't tell you how many people I've encountered who said, 10-cent beer night. How did they not know this was a terrible idea? Because up to that point, it wasn't. I mean, this was, the Indians had even done it before. They'd done it the year before. They'd done it the year before that. And this was supposed to be the first of 4 10-cent nights. And like you said, they did end up having another one a month later. And they actually drew a bigger crowd for that, although the pitching matchup might have helped. The Athletics were in town, and that was Catfish Hunter up against Lord Perry. But they learned their lesson. They limited 10-cent beers to just 2 per customer. At the one in June, you could get 6 per transaction. To the best of my knowledge, there was no cap on how many you could actually buy. But they limited it to 2 per customer the second time around, and they tripled security. One of the problems that developed fairly early on in June was the idea that, there wasn't enough security to deal with the legions of drunken idiots at the game. So less beer, more security. I think the next day's Cleveland Press said it was like a church social. They said you could actually hear the foam bubbles popping in the beer cups.
Oh my God. It's funny. We just talked with Milt Wilcox, and he said that
And he was there.
It also stems back. Yeah, a week earlier, he had the incident with Lenny Randall where they had the fight, and then all of a sudden, a week later, Texas is back in town, and Billy Martin, I guess, was quoted as saying that, "Oh, people don't show up for any games; it won't be a problem."
That's precisely what happened. I did a feature for 10 Beer Night for this month's edition of Cleveland Magazine, and Milt was one of the people I talked to. He was actually also on the field for that other great riot and forfeit of the 1970s disco demolition. He said for the week before, Lenny Randall was smarting off and basically said that Gaylord Perry was washed up and wouldn't still be in the majors if he wasn't throwing a spitter. And what Milt told me is before the game, Gaylord, if I was pitching tonight, Lenny Randall would go down every time he came up to bat. I wouldn't hit him, but I'd definitely knock him down. And obviously, if you haven't seen the video, it is out there. And they, throws one about 2 feet behind his head. On the next pitch, Lenny drops a bunt. Milt Wilcox runs over to cover first base, and Lenny just trucks him.
Milt comes off as this kind of unassuming guy, but he's obviously a troublemaker.
Well, that's the thing, too. I mean, there are guys that, a lot of people in Cleveland know Mike Hargrove, and they know Mike Hargrove from his playing career, and they know him from, when he managed those Indians teams in the 90s. And, he kind of made it sound like if he had to throw down, he was ready to throw down. And I actually heard that from other people. This didn't make the story, but Buddy Bell said Mike Hargrove might be the toughest son of a bitch he ever met.
Yeah, apparently there was a fan that ran out, and he wanted to just get like Burroughs' hat.
Yeah.
And I guess Burroughs turned around, saw this fan charging at him, and he said, no. And that started like the whole free-for-all.
Well, it was, not just one fan, because that was, I talked to a lot of people who were at the game that night, and there were a lot of people running around on the field. There was a woman who came out and tried to kiss Nestor Chilak, who was the crew chief for the umpires. There was a father and son who ran out to second base, mooned the crowd, and ran back into the seats. There were at least 2 streakers that I've heard of. And there are people who would jump down on the third base side and run over to the first base side in the outfield, and then in the next inning there would be people from the first base side. There would be more people from the first base side that would run over to the third base side through the outfield, and it was kind of like that throughout the game. And it was mostly people being doofuses, but once the guy ran down and tried to take Jeff Burroughs' hat. Billy Martin was the manager of the Rangers, and he never met a fight he could walk away from. But he said, these guys are coming for a player. We have to go help him. Grabbed a bat out of the dugout and led what I was told was the charge of the Light Brigade out to right field.
I think the thing that got me the most was Milt Wilcox talked about, you said 2 naked people. He goes, all of a sudden there were 10, there were 20, there were 50. What is it about everyone just taking their clothes off on beer night and running around?
I figured it was just because it was the 70s and streaking was a thing.
Yeah, that's a rather unfortunate thing, wasn't it?
It's a bad combination.
Yes. Beer, let's get naked.
What moment, Vince, did it start to feel like a fuse was being lit, and at some point we were looking at a kaboom?
It's like I said, the players I talked to said it seemed fairly annoying but innocuous early on. Again, I got to go back to something that Mike Hargrove said. He said he was playing first base that night. He said somebody threw a jug of wine at him, and he was not clear or not still full, but they threw the jug, and he says he just kind of kicked it over to the side of the out into foul territory, and he hoped that somebody from the grounds crew would pick it up. but he said he realized that somebody else in the stands picked it up, and that's when he got really nervous because he thought it's entirely possible I'm going to see this again. The players' wives were kind of ushered out of the seating bowl in about the sixth inning. I don't know if you guys had ever been to Cleveland Stadium, but they actually had they didn't have like a real bullpen. They would have pitchers' mounds, warm-up mounds right next to the dugouts. And eventually it got too hairy for those guys, so they had to all kind of come in the dugout as well. And just as the night kept going on, it started to look like control was being lost and something bad might happen. And then obviously in the bottom of the ninth inning, it did, and which is kind of a shame because the Indians had just tied up the game. They were on the verge of a real nice comeback, and obviously they ended up forfeiting the game.
Yeah, if the Indians just go down in the ninth quickly and just lose, do you think we escape unscathed, or did that just set things into bedlam?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it sounds like, if there was, that depends on how they lost. I mean, it's entirely possible that the, umpire whiffs on a close one and the game's over, and, somebody catches a wild hair and wants to go down and give the umpire a piece of his mind, given everything else that has happened, that had happened that night.
But this 10-cent beer night, so on the weird moments in Cleveland sports history, where does that rank in your, let's say, top 10? Is it number one? Is it top 5?
I mean, it's got to be top 5. It's really, but then again, Cleveland fans have demonstrated that they are not shy about voicing their displeasure. For a certain generation, it's 10-cent beer night. For a younger generation, it's Bottlegate, that game between the Browns and the Jaguars in 2001, when they, it was fourth down and Tim Couch ostensibly completed a play for first down, and then he runs up and spikes the ball because the team doesn't have any timeouts left. And the referees huddle up and they say the fourth down play was an incomplete pass, and the Browns turn the ball over on downs. Obviously, then as now, the rules in the NFL are if you're going to review a play or change the outcome of the play, you have to do it before the ball is snapped on the next play. This does not happen, and a lot of fans were very, very upset about that, as evidenced by the mountain of detritus that they left on the field.
Or the Cavs, that fast. I know the story you told about the Cavs when they were really bad in their early years, where they had the fast break basket, but they made one crucial mistake.
That is, yes, they did. I mean, they got I think it was the beginning of the fourth quarter. They got the tip. They never got the tip. Got on a fast break, and John Warren laid it in for 2 into the wrong basket. And there are so many weird moments in Cleveland sports history that when you talk about the Cavaliers' wrong way basket, you have to specify which one, because there was another game in 2003, right at the end of 2002-2003 season. Ricky Davis was a rebound shy of a triple-double, gets the inbounds pass, fires it up at the wrong basket so he can collect the rebound for a triple-double, not realizing that if he caught it from the wrong basket, it wasn't technically a rebound. So he catches that. It's against the Jazz. Jerry Sloan is mad as hell. One of the players from the Jazz knocks Ricky Davis on his ass, and nobody lives happily ever after that.
Oh my God! Oh my. Well,
just the way I love the way Vince speaks.
Yeah.
He's got that like he covers them, but he's sort of got the fan thing. Like, here we go again.
Yeah.
So we do a little trivia segment on this, where I ask you a question from roughly 50 years ago, and you get a 50-50 chance to get it right. And this is the same question I asked Milt Wilcox. He got it wrong. Let's see if you get it right.
No pressure.
My money's on Vince.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
So the most famous movie I can think of involving the Cleveland Indians is Major League. Okay.
Right.
So true or false? The shots of them playing baseball were not at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, but at Milwaukee County Stadium.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. I knew
You beat Milt on that one.
Good. Good.
That's
Hey,
one of
the
one
book
of
again-
the book is out through Gray Publishing, and one of the other books that Gray has done is a history of the making of Major League. So
Oh, wow.
kind of came in. I was a ringer for that question, and actually,
Oh, wow.
you can see a lot of the establishing shots in Cleveland, specifically during
Right.
the opening credits. But yeah, most of that movie was actually filmed in Milwaukee because of Bob Uecker. He was he
Right,
still
right,
is
yeah.
the announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers, and of course he was Harry Doyle in Major League, and so they kind of filmed it in Milwaukee for a variety of reasons, not the least of which to be able to make it easier for Bob Uecker to take part.
That's what we call teeing up
Yeah.
the author, Vince.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
appreciate
Very
that.
good.
Yes. The book, again, is Weird Moments in Cleveland
Good
Sports.
stuff.
The author is Vince Guerreri. Vince, where can they get your book?
The book is published Gray Publishing. Grayco.com is their website, and you can get it at the usual suspects: Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Books A Million, wherever other fine works of literature.
And there are a plethora of weird moments, so you
Exactly.
should stay busy for the foreseeable
Yeah.
future. For your sake, Vince, I am hoping that another 10-cent beer night in Cleveland is not in your future, but I'm
You and
sure
me both.
something else just as wacky is coming along. Appreciate your time today, Vince. Go enjoy that book signing.
All right, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having
Vince.
me.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Vince.
Anytime.
That's Vince Guerreri, author of the book Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. And as he mentioned, there are more than
Yeah.
just a few
Oh, yeah.
of them.
And it was-
When 10-cent beer night is not definitively number
Yeah,
one.
yes.
And
Yes.
he's like, yeah, number 5.
Yeah.
Or when he has to preface which wrong
Yes,
way
yes,
basket.
yes.
Right.
So lots of material there for Vince to go through.
He just comes off just that sort of dour look.
Yeah.
I have seen it again.
Yeah,
Wrong,
here we
that's
go.
good.
Here we go.
You know, like
You know?
something weird's going to happen, and he's just going to shake his head and
Yeah.
then just start typing. Well, there you have it. That's our take with Milt Wilcox and Vince Guerreri on one of the most crazy nights in baseball history. Flow swiftly, Little Current. Let's move on and talk a little horse racing. There would be no Triple Crown winner in '74, a year after Secretariat won it for the first time in 25 years, but Little Current was a 2/3 Triple Crown winner. After winning the Preakness, Little C won the Belmont as well, passing Derby winner Cannonade down the stretch. Current had very little room to slip through the tiniest of holes, or he would have been forced wide, and that would have meant a loss, but jockey Miguel Rivera saw the opening and took it, one going away. Owner John Galbraith said, "We've all been saying for months how the 3-year-old picture was all mixed up. I wouldn't say it was that confusing right now, would you?" So Little Current, the best 3-year-old of the year 50 years ago. Not a horse that stands the test of time the way Secretariat, Seattle Slew, Affirmed, Alidar, Spectacular Bid. There was that era right then that Randy Moss talked to us about. But nonetheless, wins 2 of the 3 races. Back when horse racing was it. And, I went to Santa Anita over the weekend.
Oh, wow.
And hadn't been there in decades, and it's still fun.
Yeah.
It's still fun.
It is.
It's too bad that
A few
there's
years
not a audience for it the way it used to be.
But you have to wonder, and mind you, I don't know deeply into the story. Cannonade's jockey, Angel Cordero, who won the Derby on him, was suspended from the race and given because of the fact he was doing some sort of rodeo tactics in a pre-Belmont race. I'm not saying it would have made any difference, but a jockey of Angel Cordero's not just skill level, but his closeness and the bond he had with Cannonade, would that have made a difference? We'll never know.
Right.
But in those type situations, a jockey is paramount with a horse. They are one of the same.
Yep.
So I always wonder in things like that, and that's not taking anything away from Little Current. But you're
Sure.
right back that when I was young, it was an event.
Yeah.
All those races.
And Little Current in the Kentucky Derby, he was last at the quarter pole, and he
Yeah.
was kind of trapped behind a bunch of horses. He still managed to finish 5th,
Yeah,
about 6
that's right.
lengths behind Cannonade. But, maybe if he hadn't had that slow start.
And we had talked about,
Right.
would there be 2 races because it
Right.
was such
That's
a crowded
right.
Right.
field,
Right.
and
Right.
now they limited at 20. So I think it was 23 horses in that one. So yeah, maybe just the crowded field. He got boxed out. So, and then what I just said is that Little Current wasn't in that same category, but if he wins the Derby, he certainly is.
For all of time.
For all of time.
But I'm saying it's amazing because he won 2 of them.
Yeah.
He won 2. Most horses win 1, and don't win the other, or don't win 2 at all. Right. And I'm saying it's amazing how like a Little Current think, he won 2 of them.
Yep.
But Cannonade is still, people can talk about that horse even though he only won 1.
Mm-hmm. Huffing, puffing, and punching. Mark, you got anything?
Well, I love, there's a picture of Jake LaMotta in there. And I always think of the movie Raging Bull. And Robert De Niro gained all this weight to play the older Jake LaMotta. But I think he gained too much weight because you're looking at this picture. And granted, this picture of LaMotta's in 74. He's got a belly, but it's not this enormous belly that, De Niro put on. And he still looks like the arms look pretty strong and the legs look pretty strong.
How old was he at that time, did they say?
I can tell you.
In his 60s, maybe?
No, I think maybe even his 50s
Okay.
in this one. So I don't know. I have to look at Raging Bull again to see when they're depicting him at the nightclub.
Right.
What stage of life he is there.
I've never seen Raging Bull.
Neither have I.
Yeah.
You and me
You
both.
really?
No, never seen it.
What is wrong with you people?
And says the guy who hasn't seen Seinfeld.
And
Yes,
the great thing
exactly.
about Raging
Yeah,
Bull
thank
is
you.
you don't need a color TV to watch it.
Right.
Because it's all in black
Many
and white.
not
people
color,
say
I'm not watching
it is like in the top 5, if not the top movie of all
It's shot
time.
great. It's a wonderfully shot film and stuff. And De Niro's great. And De Niro's in really good shape when he plays the boxing LaMotta.
You would hope.
And then he's a
Maybe
mean
next spring
SOB
training,
too.
Bill. We put that one on the list.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, but just to think, we've heard of Jake LaMotta. We've heard about his career and how famous and how great he was. To think he's just at like a benefit. Right. And you're just, that'd be amazing to see. I don't want to say it, compare it, but Mike Tyson's now canceled fight, or at least postponed fight against Jake Paul. Here's a guy that was a great champion at one point. So to see these guys at these ages, does that tarnish their image, or does it enhance it in a lot of ways? Like, he's still great.
He was 52.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was
that's not
just
bad.
looking at him. He was
Yeah, so 10 years older than I am now.
actually just shy of his 52nd birthday.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Next up, we are going to talk a little track and field real quickly, because it was interesting that the big news is the Worldwide Track and Field Authority has a rule against amateurs. So it's not only can you not be a pro, but you can't be not just in a race. So if you're an amateur, Bill, you're an amateur, Mark, you're a pro. You race against each other. Bill, you're now no longer considered an
That's
amateur.
right, because I raced against you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's say in that race, it's all amateurs, but there's a shot putter who's a pro in the same
area.
tournament.
Yeah.
Now none of you are amateurs anymore.
Dang.
So
That's
it was
crazy.
like you were
What
just
a
you were
lame rule.
guilt by association,
Yeah,
literally. So 2 athletes had signed professional contracts to play football. That's the other thing. They weren't even professional track and field stars.
Yeah.
They were professional football players. And that could mean that all of the other competitors would be ruled ineligible for being in this NCAA tournament championship. So after Tennessee won the meet, the question was, would any of these kids be allowed to continue the following season, let alone in the 76 Olympics? Now they're all pros. It doesn't matter. Everyone gets paid. But back then, they were really trying to make it clear that these were, all amateurs.
They
but
held on that amateurism. You know, like grim death.
Yep.
There was an interesting thing, though. Roger Freeberg, because it's about a guest on our
Right.
past show, he was drafted by the Rams in the 12th round of 1974. 3 rounds before the Rams drafted which guy? He was on our show.
74. A ninth round?
Yes. So he would have been drafted, it would have been drafted in the 15th round by the Rams. I'll give it to you. Bob Thomas.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we
And
had
he
him on
did the
time.
Bears instead.
Part 2, case 427.
That's it.
The story is sleazy, the testimony contradictory, the consequences degrading to all concerned. A detailed account of charges leveled against Long Beach State and an intimation that the problem at this university is the problem elsewhere in college sport by Ray Kennedy, father of 9 children. Yeah. The NCAA took pains to point out that the stiff punishment imposed upon the 49ers was for misdeeds that were among the most serious we have ever considered. What is wrong with college sport today? Unscrupulous recruiters, unsupervised boosters, disgruntled athletes, loose money, and the desperate pressure to win. Sounds a lot like today.
Yeah.
Of the 23 football violations, 5 involved linebacker Charles Lewis. Specifically, while he was attending San Francisco City College, he received credit for courses at Long Beach State without being required to attend class or complete assignments. That without his knowledge during the same period, he was also given credit at 2 other schools. So basically, he graduated in 3 months.
That's the best type of college education.
The NCAA box score on Lewis, the quadruple threat scholar, is impressive. While earning 12 credits at San Francisco City College, he was gaining 7 from Long Beach State, 5 from Long Beach State, 3 from Azusa Pacific College, without ever once attending such courses. And it's too bad because the courses sound interesting. Golf, advanced modern techniques of coaching basketball, and officiating men's spring sports.
You would figure they would own that anyhow.
And he got straight A's.
Yeah,
I mean, this
that's
guy
shocking.
was just valedictorian of 4 different colleges. That is impressive.
And what's so interesting is the George Gervin angle where, they're talking about, that in July of 1970, he visited there and then assistant coach improperly introduced him and got his brother to try to place his brother at Compton College and to arrange a football scholarship, and that Gervin took place in an illegal tryout. I mean, all this stuff today would be just like, what?
Well, yeah, they talked about Ed Ratliff, that at the expense of he flew at the expense of the Pacers to negotiate a contract and then was permitted to play for the 49ers in his senior year.
Wow.
So, I mean, there were things going on, and nowadays that would probably, I don't know if the contract would, but there'd still be that opportunity to know I'm leaving after this year. You might not be able to actually negotiate the contract.
The NCAA was kind of full of itself, and, it's just
still are in certain ways.
Yeah, and, now they're like,
well, no, what they do now is they pick out one random kid from some tiny college that tries to transfer back home, and they go, nope, can't do it. Every other college, people can do things. There was a kid that went from a small school to Florida. They wouldn't let him play this year.
And I'm, obviously a UCLA alum, but what they did to Reggie Bush in USC was just
terrible,
ridiculous.
Yes, and it took so long to right that wrong.
And the thing is, they all they did is punish the kids after Reggie.
Right.
That's all they did is take someone and said, okay, no bowl games or lack of scholarships for you. So that didn't seem fair.
Football coach Jim Stangelin, my major criticism of the NCAA is that they never checked the credibility of the disgruntled athletes they investigated. Kirby, their star witness, was arrested for 62 traffic citations. Had they bothered to check, they would have found a lot of other things.
That he's a bad driver?
He is definitely a bad driver. But there were just too many examples of players having tests taken for them, money and apartments being showered to player after player or their girlfriends or wives. The fact that Lute Olson's 49ers, 24-2 last season, would have been strong contenders for the national championship made the NCAA ban on postseason play more difficult to bear. Calling his 1 year at Long Beach State a nightmare, Olson quit 3 months ago to become head coach at Iowa. Tarkanian always pleaded that he was innocent. He never once copped to his dying day.
Yeah.
Both at Long Beach State and later at UNLV, where success and trouble also followed him, he had those doughy eyes, and he looked so sheepish. And there are many people to this day who say he was a victim, including a New York Times article a few years after his death that seemed to exonerate him. So we'll never fully know who was telling the truth, but his legacy was certainly tarnished. Abe Lemons, head coach at Pan American University, said, reminds me of the guy driving down the road doing 60 and everybody else is passing him going 80. And a cop stops the guy and he says, why me? And the cop says, because you're easier to catch. So, basically it sounds like the coaches of that era were saying, okay, if you're going to come for one, you got to come for all, because you can't let cheating, go, because we're at a disadvantage. If Washington State's cheating and winning, then how do we compete with that? And it was a long road. There was a lot of years. You don't see it as often, right? Remember, what was it? SMU,
That's right? They got the death penalty because of the Craig
penalty.
James and Dickerson. And also remember, you mentioned this in one show, Scott, that remember when things were based on your GPA?
Oh, yeah.
And if you didn't have a 2.0, you couldn't play?
Yeah.
Now you knew nothing. And then they had that big, that was was it the Texas Tech? I was at Handspar, the running back, and his GPA in college was 0. You know,
That
they
sounds
found
like somebody
that out
from
afterwards.
Animal House.
Right.
Yeah,
They're the
it was like
GPA. 0.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life.
Yeah. Then he puked on him at least, but, you know.
All right, the people section.
Oh, wait, you got to quickly just talk about the babes in the Swedish woods.
Go for it.
I mean, come on. This is like this is a contest that they held in Sweden, and it's like I've never heard of anything like it combines cross country with like a game of trying to figure out where you're at, and basically, you know, they're thrown into this area in the woods, and they have to run and navigate. They've never been there before, and navigate with these maps. You don't have a cell phone or anything like that. And it's a contest to see who can get through this wilderness to the designated spot.
So it's the Amazing Race now.
It is basically that's what it is. It is,
yeah.
and it's all in Sweden, and you know during where it doesn't get dark till midnight.
Or
and stuff
Survivor,
like
Scott's best friend.
right? Yeah. I just thought it was a fascinating thing that now it could be a little like. What was the game show you did, Bill?
Wipeout. Let's make it
So, but this one at least they're not like hurling
bashing
stuff at you.
Yeah.
Right. But I thought that was just interesting. And then if you ever see the movie Midsommar, I wouldn't do any
he
running.
did.
Yeah, I would never.
Worst
do any
movie
running.
ever.
I've never
That's
seen it.
your opinion.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
bad.
some of them are putting some sort of bear. Yeah, I'm done.
Oh, God.
It's obviously not a movie for everybody or anybody. No.
Did you like it?
It was a little weird for me too.
Now, Scott had nothing good to say about it.
No. I would have walked out, but it was 100 degrees that day, so we were just in there for the air conditioning.
So I apologize because now you're at the people section and I interrupted you.
No, you're
That's
just
quite
keep-
all right.
yeah,
This is a good
no
one.
matter.
People section. Walter Williams felt mixed delight and regret when he received word that he had won 8 box seats to future Phillies games in a newspaper contest. Williams asked that the tickets be mailed to his wife in West Philadelphia because he was serving 15 months of a 3 to 10 year sentence for aggravated robbery and is unable to conveniently arrange a day off from prison. Now we know why Veterans Stadium in Philly has a jail in the stadium.
That's right.
So, yeah, good. I love that.
Hawaii outfielder Gene Locklear, poor guy, failed to run out a pop fly for the second time in 4 days.
Yeah.
So the manager suspended him, and Locklear spent 3 days on the bench without pay. So comes back after that day, after the 3 days, gets first at bat following the suspension. He bounces an easy grounder to the infield and ran like hell to first base. But he tripped on the bag, sprained his left ankle, and twisted his right ankle. He's on the disabled list.
Yeah.
Which they don't call the disabled list anymore. It's now
Right.
the IR.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's where you just don't get out of bed. Then.
No,
Right.
no, man.
I also like Frank Lindsay, the 33-year-old reliever.
Ah,
for
it
the
was
Phillies.
good, yeah.
And he said he's never asked for a raise in his 10 major league
Right.
assistant because it's hard to believe, but I just don't think a man should ask for more money than he's worth.
He would.
The enemy of the players
Every
union.
player, yeah. And then what'd he say? One day they sent him a contract and he put it in a drawer and forgot about it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
They
Pay me
thought
whatever
they
you
thought he
want.
was holding out.
Yes, they
So
did.
they did offer him
they
more
offered him
money.
more money. Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's great.
More baseball. Forkballer of the year, Gaylord Perry is hot. 10 straight wins for the future Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
He is known to have thrown a spitball, which makes the ball do all kinds of strange things. People think that the spitball means that you're literally spitting on the
it,
ball.
yeah.
Just
But
putting-
really what it means is you're taking some sort of substance that you're hiding on your glove, your hat, your shirt, whatever, and you put it on the ball repeatedly. And if it has enough on it, you know, if you throw it at a certain velocity, it will just move. I mean, it doesn't have to move a foot. If it moves just an inch, you know, you less contact, less hard contact, and Gaylord.
Go ahead. Was it the Necros or the Perrys that the game was in Anaheim?
That
and
was
they-
Joe Necro.
Joe Necro.
Necro, and then-
he threw the emery board out of his back
Right.
pocket.
And,
Well,
the-
not me.
and as he threw the emery board, the umpire just looks at it sailing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Joe Necro. Yeah.
So Gaylord was known for throwing the spitter, and he freely admits that he used to, but now he's saying he isn't. But just the idea of
It
him
gets in their head.
got in their
Yeah.
head, and he was a character. Those days are behind him. He relies on his fastball and forkball. I don't know anything about his forkball, says Billy Martin, but he still throws a spitter.
And he would know.
That's just another name for a spitter.
Right.
Joe Coleman had a forkball. Yeah. But yeah, he was 10-1 when this article was written. He finished with 21 wins that season. But what's interesting is, so you take the Perrys and the Necros. So, Gaylord Perry and Jim Perry combined for 529 wins.
That's right.
That is pretty impressive.
314
39 years
by Gaylord.
And they both won Cy Young.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
But the Necros, Phil and Joe, combined for 539 wins.
Wow.
So they're the all-time winning brother combo. But those are two pretty impressive.
But Jim Perry's completely overshadowed by
Gaylord, absolutely.
Completely. Maybe because of the spitball stuff.
Probably.
He did win, 99 more games in it, but still Jim Perry was a good pitcher, man.
Yep. No question.
And I think Jim was on the Tigers for 1 year.
I think you might be right.
Nobody cares.
I know.
Elsewhere in baseball, we know the A's were a great team back then, and we know they didn't like each other. Reggie Jackson and Billy North, who had been feuding, brawled in Detroit. Jackson wound up with an injured shoulder, and catcher Ray Fosse suffered a back injury trying to break it up. Some streaks to talk about. Jim Palmer, who was the Cy Young Award winner the previous year, had lost 7 in a row. Unheard of. I would have had him on my fantasy team that year. The Dodgers had won 28 games in a row when Steve Yeager was their catcher. That seems kind of just bizarre.
Never made an All-Star game, Steve Yeager.
No. But did win a MVP of a World Series.
Yeah, and he also took the bat in the throat.
Oh, my gosh.
That one word.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And Braves pitcher Buzz Capra has thrown 25 scoreless innings in a row and had his ERA down to 1.17. So baseball in full gear as we head to the summer of 74.
I have one thing to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Astros, Houston, introduced the foamer. It was an attempt to increase lagging home attendance. If an Astro homers when the scoreboard clock shows an even number, for example, 10-12, everyone gets free beer through the 8th inning.
Wow, here we go again with the beer.
That's just another Jim Dandy idea.
Oh, my God.
And, I mean, I'm not saying, if I was of age in those years and there was free beer,
I'd go to every game.
Oh, for the love of God. I mean, it'd be,
And like it'd be 10-11, and you'd be like, don't pitch
you
it,
dare,
don't
you
do
it.
Hit throw the ball.
Yeah.
I think we need this episode of the podcast to be sponsored by Coors.
Right?
Yes.
Or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
The game plan is to avoid getting waffle-faced. Racquetball was the hot new thing 50 years ago. Did you guys ever play racquetball?
Not in those years. But later in life there was a court, and I played. Not good, not well, but I played.
Fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
And racquetball is still popular. But if they were writing the article today, it would be pickleball. Pickleball.
That's right.
Right. Well, that's so funny that you say that, Mark, because I was going to say I'm not going to talk about that, but I am going to mention that a good friend of ours, Brad Gold, just opened up the Calabasas Pickleball Club.
There you go.
It's beautiful. It looks like a country club.
Please go.
So do yourself a favor. If even if you don't like pickleball, you will like this place. It is awesome. Took him a long time to get up and going. It's the first one, I believe, in the Southern California area. So 5155 Old Scandia Lane in Calabasas, one-of-a-kind place that literally opened up in May.
And what's so funny about Brad's place is that used to be Far West Farms, and my daughter used to ride horses there.
Is that where she used to ride?
Yeah. That's where she used to ride, right
there.
there. And you have to drive by a pet cemetery to get there.
So what you're saying is Brad took memories from you.
I mentioned it to Caitlin. She goes,
and you
man,
love
I'm going to get sad if you mention it.
Burned it to the ground.
Yeah. And Mark loves him, so we don't have to worry.
Think Brad, there's going to be a restaurant there, too. I think there's a really well-known chef that's going to be putting together the food for the restaurant.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Hopefully, I'm giving you the right information, Brad. But
it's Bele Maoni.
Yeah.
Is the chef.
So, please check it out.
Yeah.
But what only famous racquetball player I've ever heard of? Jeff Conine.
Oh, is that right?
Is he a
was
racquetball player?
Yeah, his family was, and he was like somewhat of a champion.
I played racquetball for a couple years.
Did you really?
Not.
Yeah.
No, but just it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, they have racquetball courts at a lot of the LA fitnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you go in, there's...
At my age now, it's hard for me to do that. Like, for instance, I played pickleball on Saturday, and I'm great playing the pickleball. I got a deadly serve, man. My serve is hard.
I'm not messing with you, buddy.
It's like a ping pong serve because it barely gets over the net. It's like a line drive. But so I'm playing. I feel great, like I normally do. And then about 6-7 hours later, my Achilles feels a little tight. And then the next morning, it's just like a rock. Throbbing and stuff.
You know who was good at racquetball was John Candy.
Oh, really?
Was he really?
You wouldn't think that.
Remember in Splash? He's
Oh,
playing
yeah,
Tom
that's right. That's
Hanks,
right.
And he just takes it right in the face.
That's right.
In the face.
God.
Oh, God.
Our movie recall is just the best.
Yes. So I don't feel so bad about me knowing the score of a Tigers game.
Because both of you were kind of like,
79.
yeah, John Candy was good at
Yeah,
racquetball. I wouldn't have guessed
then
that.
it clicked in. There you go. You're absolutely right. Love that guy.
Everyone is helpless and in awe. An article on the one and only Reggie Jackson, and it's kind of funny because it reads like an introduction to him. Like, ladies and gentlemen, this is Reggie Jackson, but this is his 5th full season. He's been an all-star 4 times. He was the MVP the year prior in 73. He's off to a great start, hitting .400 with 15 home runs and 42 RBIs. Isn't always the most popular guy in the league. Heck, as we mentioned earlier, not even the most popular guy in his own clubhouse.
No.
As he and Billy North got into a squabble. Jackson wants to make up with North, and North is not interested. Not done with Reggie. So, White Sox pitcher Stan Bonds instead of Reggie. He's a hell of a ball player, but I'm not one of his fans. I don't like him. I think he's a prima donna.
Yeah.
A year later, Bonds was traded to Oakland. So that would have been a funny little...
Well, you know, Reggie was just, people forget, like, he started off in Kansas City. The A's were in Kansas City his first year. You know, they weren't even in Oakland. And then in 69, I think at the All-Star break, he had over 30 homers, and there was talk he was going to break Maris's record / Babe's. And
finished with 47.
Right, and he finished with 47. So he was a hot name coming in there.
Yeah.
And this is just the beginning of his career. This is before his 1 year with the Orioles, the Yankee years.
That's right.
Angel years.
Yep.
My favorite Reggie Jackson story, though, is when he was with the Angels. I'm doing a post-game interview, okay?
Yeah.
And so Jim Hill is the greatest interviewer ever. Jim is so good, he doesn't have to ask a question. He can make a statement, and the athlete will answer it as a question. Mm-hmm. So I actually tried that approach, and I made some sort of a statement to him. And he just looked at me, and he put his arm around my waist and said, "Next time you may want to put a question in there." and then he did answer the question, but I felt, hey, Reggie put his arm around my waist. Hey.
Right.
Reggie was made for these days, though.
Yeah.
Reggie's a social. He'd be a social media star with the way he carried himself, the things he said. When a guy says, "I'm the straw that stirs the drink," that's a $1 billion statement.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. He had 2 friends of Portuguese descent, big boys who own a garage where Reggie keeps his show and race cars, and Tony Del Rio served as a bodyguard for Reggie during the World Series when he received some death threats. Didn't affect him as he won MVP of the series, and after taking home the MVP for the regular season, A's owner and Jackson nemesis Charlie Finley said he was a lousy MVP. They had to give it to somebody. You know, nowadays, owners would be promoting that.
Yes,
They'd be on everything. They'd be selling it, and Finley was downplaying it. And people wonder why the A's didn't draw well with those great teams, and it's because Finley, for as great he was as promoting the game, he made this adversarial relationship with the players, and the community didn't want to support that.
There would have been pictures. There should have been pictures of the whole team up because every one of those guys were awesome, and Jackson being the head of it, you could have put that everywhere. That thing would have sold out.
Right. And it wasn't the first time.
No.
After hitting those 47 homers in 69, Jackson holds out in 70, trying to get a contract for $50,000. He finally signs and starts slow. Finley benches him for 13 games.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Wow.
He hit a pinch hit grand slam, and as he crosses home plate, Reggie raises a fist in defiance toward Finley in his box. Finley has a public apology drawn up for Reggie to sign. Reggie refuses to sign it, so there was all these kind of drama between the two. Finally, the A's first series championship in 72, but Jackson missed it after tailing his hamstring, stealing home, beating the hapless Detroit Tigers. when they won Jackson's.
Hapless 5-game
Yeah.
series.
It was not
Hapless.
Yeah, 4-1.
Yeah, done.
No, it was a 5-game series. And we lost the 5th game 2-1.
Yeah.
Mark knows all this.
Right.
You're pushing the
Don't
wrong
be-
buttons here, buddy.
4-1-ing me.
He's going to go after you.
Pat Underwear took the loss.
He did.
Underwoods are calling, man. They're after you.
When he won, Jackson said it was the worst feeling he ever had watching his teammates win with him not being able to participate. So,
But in 73
anyway,
and 74, he
right?
got
You know,
this-
he wins it in 72, 3-4, 77 and 78 with the Yankees. He's known as Mr. October. He wins a couple of World Series MVPs, one of the greatest
Games ever.
October
Yeah.
players ever, in that 3 home
Yep,
run
yep.
game that he had at Yankee
On
Stadium.
3 pitches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is one that will forever be remembered.
I'm really fascinated, though, by his background and stuff because, you know, he's got an African-American, Latin American
Yeah.
background. He grew up, and he's a Methodist, but he grew up in a neighborhood outside of Philly that was Jewish. So he had all this, and then he pals around with these Portuguese motor sportsmen.
Right.
So he was a man of the
Yeah, he
people,
really
of
was.
everything. You know,
Yep.
he cut across all ethnicities and
Absolutely.
and religious groups and
I think he still does, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's, you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right. For the record, the 28th NFL franchise for $16 million to Seattle, where a new domed stadium is under construction. The latest expansion team is scheduled to begin play in 1976. In 2002, they were worth $534 million. Today, they are valued at $5 billion.
Yep.
And Bill, I believe the couple years for you, you got a few of that billion.
I did. I was there when they won their Super Bowl. You know what I'm just saying? Just think 30. If you had told me 37 years later, I'd be working for them. That was quite a time. Quite a great team defensively, offensively, and meeting everybody was just great.
And the Seahawks have the greatest uniform, the old original uniforms, the Steve Largent ones.
Yep.
They wore it as a retro against the Cowboys like this year or the year before, but it's that blue with the silver helmets and the silver pants and the lime green little trim. That is the best uniform.
So that's going to do it on a crazy edition of the Past Our Prime podcast with Reggie Jackson on the cover from June 17th, 1974. Baseball at its best and baseball at its worst. 10-cent beer night. Want to thank both Milt Wilcox for talking about his experience that one night in Cleveland when he was on the mound as Mark and all his friends were streaking behind him, leading a cavalry of naked men in the outfield.
I lost my sock in that one, too. I had 2 socks on a streak.
You lost your mind.
Yeah.
And Vince Gieri, who wrote the book Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. Thank them both for joining us and talking about that infamous night, the 10-cent beer night.
This was a fun show.
Yeah.
You know what
Every
I feel
one
like
of them.
now as we sign off? I want to go get a beer.
Yeah,
Come
there
on.
we go.
I have not.
It only cost you $38 now.
I have not seen Mark so excited. You get if we had a Tiger guy on
Oh my
every
God.
week.
You imagine
or
if we had
or
Alan
Spur.
Trammell on?
No,
Oh, my God.
no, I love Jack Morris.
Billy Paltz.
But Jack Morris was very gruff. So Milt is friendly.
You get one of those Spurs or something, and
Milt would
Wembanyama.
Milt would have kept going for another hour.
We
He
need
was-
him on
was
more.
Good to go.
The guys like
all
that.
right, we're not going for another
No,
hour.
we're
We're
done.
saying goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Go Tigers.
I'm Scott. We're past our prime.